Zoe and Marcus started the same job, in the same month, at the exact same salary, same offer letter, practically the same number on the page. Zoe retired at 55. Marcus retired at 66. 11 years apart. Same salary the entire time they worked together. Same raises, on almost the same schedule. Same market, the same funds. Even, for most of it, if you're waiting for the twist where Marcus made some huge mistake, there isn't one. He did almost everything right. He just did it 10 years later than Zoe did. And 10 years turned out to be the whole story. Here's what actually happened. From the beginning, Zoe got her first paycheck at 24 and set aside 10% of it that same week into a retirement account. Automatically, before she'd even fully unpacked her new apartment. She didn't have extra money lying around. Nobody does at 24. She just decided the 10% didn't exist as spendable income and built her actual life around what was left. Marcus, also 24, had a plan to a completely reasonable one. He had student loans to pay off first. Then he wanted to save for a wedding. Then a house down payment made more sense to prioritize. Every single one of those was a legitimate, responsible reason to wait. Nobody watching from the outside would have called any of them irresponsible. He started investing at 34. The same 10%. The same discipline. Just a decade later than Zoe. It's worth being clear about something here, because it's easy to quietly judge Marcus and miss the actual point. Every one of his reasons was genuinely sound financial advice. In isolation. Pay off high-interest debt before investing, that's real. Solid guidance. Save for a wedding instead of going into debt for it, also real. Solid guidance. None of his individual decisions were wrong. The problem was never any single choice. It was that each reasonable decision quietly pushed a starting line back. And nobody along the way was tracking what that delay was actually costing him. Because it didn't feel like a cost. It felt like responsibility. 10 years. That's the entire gap between them. Not effort. Not income. Not intelligence. 10 years of compounding. And nothing else. Here's the math. And it's worth actually sitting with it. Because most people underestimate it by a wide margin. Zoe invested for 10 years. Then this is the part people find hard to believe: she could have stopped entirely at 34. Contributed $0 additional for the rest of her working life. And still ended up with more money at retirement than Marcus, who kept contributing steadily for the next 30 years straight. 10 years of contributions. Invested early. Outgrew 30 years of contributions invested later. Not because Zoe was smarter, or luckier, or picked better investments. Because money that's been compounding since age 24 has 11 extra years to double. And double again. Before either of them touches it. Marcus's money was just as capable of doing the same thing. It simply never got the same amount of time to do it in. This is why financial educators sometimes call the 10 years between 25 and 35 the most valuable investing decade of your entire life, not because the dollars invested then are worth more, literally, but because time is the one variable in compounding that can never be recovered later, no matter how much money you throw at catching up. Picture it as two trees planted in the same soil, given the same sunlight, the same water, the exact same growing conditions. The only difference is that one tree got planted 10 years before the other. By the time both are fully grown, nobody standing in that forest would describe the size difference as small, even though the only variable that ever differed was the planting date. Compounding money works the same way. It doesn't care how much effort goes into planting late. It only cares how long the things actually had to grow. Marcus actually tried to catch up. Around age 40, once he understood what those 10 years had cost him, he increased his contribution rate well beyond 10%. Well beyond what Zoe ever contributed in any single year. It helped. It genuinely made a real difference. It did not, and mathematically could not, close the entire gap. Because you cannot purchase your way back into a decade that's already passed. You can only add more money to less time. And less time is the one input compounding can't be talked into working around. So why did this happen? Not because Marcus lacked willpower, he clearly had plenty. Once he started, the real reason is a specific, well-studied blind spot in how humans think about starting dates. There's a landmark study, From researchers Madrian and Dennis Shea, looking at retirement savings behavior inside real companies. When employees had to actively opt into a retirement plan, participation was low, even among employees who, if you'd surveyed them, said they intended to save for retirement eventually. But when the exact same plan was offered with automatic enrollment, meaning employees were signed up by default and had to actively opt out if they didn't want to participate, participation rates jumped dramatically, often above 90%. With the same employees, the same salaries, the same intentions they'd had all along. Nothing about the financial logic changed between those two setups. What changed was whether starting required a decision, or not starting did. Marcus, without realizing it, had put himself in the opt-in version of his own life. Every reasonable priority in front of investing was, functionally, a default setting that had to be actively overridden for him to start. Zoe accidentally built the opt-out version for herself. Investing was the default, and every other expense had to fit around it, rather than the other way around. This is the actual habit worth taking from Zoe and Marcus, and it has nothing to do with which of their individual financial decisions was smarter. It's about which one of them made investing the default and which one made it the exception. If you're waiting for the right moment after this debt, after this expense, after things settle down, that instinct isn't irrational. Every single reason on that list is probably completely legitimate. But legitimate reasons to wait never actually stop arriving. There will always be another completely reasonable one waiting right behind the current one for the rest of your life. If delay is the default you're operating from, the fix isn't waiting for a year with no legitimate reasons left. That year doesn't come. The fix is making the smallest possible amount, even 5%, even less automatic, starting now, so that saving becomes the thing you'd have to actively stop, instead of the thing you're always about to start. Zoe didn't do anything Marcus couldn't have done. She just made the decision once, on day one, instead of waiting for a version of her life with no good reason left to postpone it. That version of anyone's life never actually arrives. 11 years later, that turned out to be the only difference that mattered. There's a quieter version of this story worth naming too, because it's not just about retirement accounts specifically. The same pattern shows up anywhere. A small, boring action compounds over a long enough time. Starting to exercise, starting to learn a skill, starting to fix a relationship instead of waiting for the right moment to bring it up. The math is always the same shape, even when there's no dollar sign attached. The version of you who starts today, imperfectly, with whatever small amount of effort you actually have available, ends up somewhere entirely different from the version who keeps waiting for a cleaner starting line that never arrives on its own. If this made you think differently about the word eventually, subscribe, because next week, we're covering why comparing yourself to other people is quietly making you poorer, in a very specific and measurable way almost nobody notices happening in real time. Same honest stories, same simple truth. See you in the next one.